Hello, and welcome to Setting the Standard, the podcast about wireless radio standards creation from the Wireless Innovation Forum. I'm your host and Communications Director of the Forum, Stephanie Hamill. In this episode, I'm talking with the Forum's regulatory advisor, Prakash Moorut of Shure, about the upcoming International Spectrum Sharing Workshop being held in Reston, Virginia this May. Hi, Prakash. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hi, Stephanie. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So we're talking about the upcoming International Spectrum Sharing Workshop that's going to take place in May in Reston as part of our general meeting. So can you give a recap of like our past workshops leading up to this one and maybe some highlights from this year's workshop as well?
Okay. So I would say that the previous workshops focused mostly on spectrum sharing in bands that WinForum worked on, like the CBRS band or the 6 GHz band. As you know, we work on the SAS, the Spectrum Access System for the CBRS band, also the AFC, the Automated Frequency Coordination System for the 6 GHz band here in the United States. We also had, I think, a couple of sessions with regulators from around the world. They came and talked about spectrum initiatives in their country or region. Those may or may not have involved spectrum sharing, but it was a great opportunity just for the audience to see what's going on outside of the US. So for this year's upcoming workshop, I would say really that the main focus is on spectrum for 6G. As you probably know, the target launch for 6G is around 2030, and all the countries in the world and also regional groups of ITU and including ITU are trying to find spectrum for 6G, and there are several candidate bands being studied, not just United States, but globally. Spectrum sharing will play an important role in unlocking spectrum for 6G for various reasons, and we'll hear about that, I guess, during the sessions, during the workshop itself. So in United States, for example, bands like 3.1 gigahertz or 7 and 8 gigahertz will be covered by speakers from Verizon, Nokia, Ericsson, and even CTIA. What are the challenges related to unlocking these bands for 6G, and perhaps also a way forward. So I'm looking forward to, them sharing maybe a path forward in making these bands available for 6G. We'll also have a session with regulators from Germany, UK, Egypt, and Canada. We're going to share their thoughts about spectrum for 6G. And one interesting thing is you probably will hear about 6 gigahertz being mentioned in the context of 6G, while in the United States, as you know, that band was open for unlicensed systems like Wi-Fi. So that's going to be interesting just to hear from these regulators. Maybe not all of them, but at least I would think like Germany and the UK, and perhaps also Egypt, mentioning 6 gigahertz in the context of 6G, which would be very interesting. Actually, we had a couple of regulators come talk about this band, the 6 gigahertz band, in the context of 6G during the course of the Regulatory Advisory Committee that I chair in the WinForum. So I'm the Chief Regulatory Officer of the WinForum, and I chair that group. And we'll have a couple of regulators showing up and talk about 6 gigahertz in the context of 6G, which is very interesting. And I would say beyond the bands themselves, there will be an engaging panel on mobile demand, as there have been some people challenging the claims by the mobile industry in terms of the mobile traffic increasing, and they'll need hundreds of megahertz of spectrum, correct? So I know there have been a couple of people challenging those claims. So instead of back and forth through LinkedIn posts or in the press, I thought it would be good to just gather some of these key players in the same room and have an open conversation about that topic. So very interesting agenda. I think a lot of I'm assuming we're going to see a lot of back and forth, a lot of engagement from different players, key players who know what we're talking about. So very excited to have been able to put this together, and looking forward to to those 2 days of a workshop. So.
Yeah, that last panel should be pretty exciting, I think, and people will come away with a lot of information. And speaking of that, what do you think people are going to leave this workshop knowing that they maybe didn't know before they came in?
Yeah, I think first, in the context of 6G, I think it would be good just to hear from the different actors from the mobile industry and also from the regulators on where they stand with respect to spectrum for 6G, not just the bands, in terms of how much spectrum they think they'll need, or from regulators' side, how much spectrum they will make available for 6G. But beyond 6G, I just want to touch on a couple of things. I think that would be very interesting for the audience. As you know, at our event in London in October of last year, we had someone from a French regulatory body, ANFR, come talk about frequency coordination or spectrum sharing of thousands of wireless devices for the Paris Olympic Games last year, correct? And we are talking thousands of devices like wireless microphones, wireless cameras, private mobile radio that need to be coordinated over several venues and using limited spectrum. And as you know, I lead the Spectrum and Regulatory Affairs team for Shure, which manufactures innovative audio products like wireless mics, in-ear monitors, etc. So I've been in the middle of all of this, and this is a topic that members of the WIN Forum are not familiar with. But just based on the feedback we got from the London event, there was a lot of interest about this, I would call maybe new topic for the members of a WIN Forum. And these devices are used not just for these mega events like the Olympic Games or the Super Bowl, but also on the daily basis, correct? If you go to your child's school play, if you go to a sports event, if you go to houses of worship, you'll see wireless mic being used all the time. So based on that positive feedback that we got, we thought we're gonna, it's good to have someone who's actually involved in the preparation of the LA Olympic Games in 2028. So his name is John Dundas, and he did the Paris Olympic Games, and now he's involved in the LA Olympic Games. I think he's also involved in the 2026 FIFA World Cup with Mexico and Canada and US. And as you probably know, next year, US will celebrate its 250th anniversary with a series of events, as part of that celebration. So a lot of his, wireless audio and wireless camera devices will be used in all of his upcoming, events. So I think, that's going to be interesting. So in addition to 6G, I think people will learn a lot about, maybe an area that people don't really pay attention to, but also require a spectrum. And spectrum sharing is basically what's needed in order to make all of these different devices work in a very limited amount of spectrum. So again, great agenda, I think, for the upcoming meeting. I'm looking forward again for the workshop in May. So.
Yeah, and that talk by John last time was so interesting. I'm going to go ahead and link in the show notes below those presentations from, it was last fall, right? I think it was last fall.
In October. Yeah, we have a French regulatory body, person from there, Emmanuel Fossiouye, and then John Dundas was also there in London. So this time John will come and talk about the US events coming up. So yeah, that would be a great idea to link.
Yeah, I'll link those so people can get an idea. Such good content-rich information. So also go ahead and link registration for our upcoming event in May in Reston. So thanks so much again for joining me, Prakash, and I will see you in a month.
Yeah, you're welcome. Looking forward to seeing you and other people at the workshop in May. So thanks.
Great, thanks.